So, my wife passed away. It was a very hard time for me and my two children, until I found out even more devastating news. Not only did I just lose the love of my life, but her own sister was now trying to take custody of my kids, and I'll tell you right now, she's going to take my kids over my dead body. Some say that loss hurts until the day of the funeral, but that's when the struggle really begins. I was married for at least 12 years to Rena. 12 years with ups and downs, which at least we were largely enjoyable, and left me with a couple of beautiful children. 10-year-old Lynn and 6-year-old Mickey. We were a model family, with only weakness being its leader. Me. I admit that I suffered some alcohol excesses during these last few years, and I used to go drinking with the boys at the tavern late into the night. And although I didn't usually come home drunk, since I never liked being fully in drunk mode anyways, at least the latent concern was still there. I'm not an alcoholic, not by a long shot, instead of being one of those guys who come home screaming and perhaps beating his wife when they do arrive. I became quiet, passive, and, well, just like to meditate. I used to come and sneak up to bed where Rena would greet me with a kiss and a scolding for being so late. In that sense, I felt I failed her a little. I tried to quit, but the feeling of group ecstasy with my friends was simply too strong. It's not that I didn't enjoy her or the kids. It was just another aspect of my life that I wanted to keep alive. We got married very young, and I feel like I didn't experience those moments I should have at my age. So, if I wasn't technically hurting anyone, I felt like I wasn't doing anything wrong. And that's when Rena's illness started. It all started with a simple cough, no big deal. But it starts to get complicated by the rainy season, and she was prone to seasonal sickness. But this time things went from bad to worse. We started with soups, juices, teas, vitamins, and rest, but everything seemed to have the opposite effect. Her nose was red from so much shaking, and even the kids were helping Mommy recover. There were times when, excuse me, it was a little difficult to write this in tears. There were times when Rena would get better and could even get out of bed, but it was only for short periods of time. And then it would get worse to the point where I would have to miss work to take care of her. The children would go to school worried and hoping to find their mother fully recovered when they returned home. The one aspect of this whole experience, though, that I'm mildly grateful for, was that it did not happen at Christmas time, as a memory of that caliber would have been devastating for us all. Anyways, I'm writing all this to comment on Rena's passing 2 weeks ago. I had to work up the courage to be able to express this all, as it was 12 years at her side. From the time we were in college until the last of her days, giving the purest love I could ask for. Out of it came our children who still cry for her at night, and I can't blame them. She was a great woman, a great person, and she will surely remain in our memories. Still, I can't help but feel a little bad for all the times when my vices got the most out of me, forgetting the responsibilities at home, so many things I currently want to tell her and I can't. So all I can do is keep the family afloat, doing my best in raising them as Rena were present. I don't know what'll change in our lives over the next few weeks, but I hope I can make the kids not feel the loss as her parents as, well, expected. Tomorrow I'm taking them to their grandmother's, Rena's mother, for a warm visit, then we'll go to my mother's maybe next weekend. We all need support at this time, and if you've ever been in a similar position, my only advice so far is to seek backing from those closest to you. Map out a life plan, and even if it all looks difficult, persist for a greater reward. We all need someone to tell you, "Come on, man, you can do it." And I just don't want to believe I lost that one person. Update number 1 month later. Hey guys, it's been about a month since Rena's departure, and boy, have things changed. Not very well, to say the least, and Rena had a sister that I did not get along very well with. Molly. She's older by a couple years, and ever since we started dating, she's been a detractor of the relationship I had with Rena. When we started dating, she would tell her that I wasn't mature enough to have a relationship. When I proposed to her, she told her sister that it was a mistake because we were too young, and when she got pregnant with Lynn, she told her that it was best to give up, as it was screwing up her life too fast in short term. So, she didn't like me at all from the beginning. Now it turns out that this woman dares to want to take my children away from me and for her to have full custody of them after Rena's death. That's right, just as you read it. She wants to separate me from Lynn and Mickey, claiming that I'm not fit to raise them on my own, and she talked to Rena frequently and poisoned her mind with various ideas about me. I remember once she told her that she had been seeing me come out of a brothel, which prompted Rena to make a video call. Upon answering it, she realized it was absolutely false. Molly must have been mistaken for someone else because I was attending to a client at a private dinner. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I'm a lawyer, and sometimes I take on very important clients with whom I have to look as polished as possible. This led to a marital conflict, as Molly had led her sister to believe that I was cheating on her, or that I was at least in the middle of a racy situation. Nothing could be further from the truth. I would venture to say that Molly was one of the low points of our relationship, and that's a factor I cannot and should not change. After all, she's family, and they remain even after your time on Earth is over, and in this case, but to consider myself unfit to raise my own kids when I've done nothing to endanger or neglect them, it's irrational. I tried to talk to my mother-in-law, but now she changed her attitude towards me. She used to be a gracious lady, and while she never got a great comment regarding my relationship with her daughter, she also never objected at any time, respecting her daughter's decisions. I don't understand how she let herself be manipulated so darn easily. Although, considering she has lost one of her daughters, she will do whatever the other one tells her to do, I bet. And it happened in the most informal way possible, through a phone call. And not only that, while the kids were in class. So I got a call from Molly herself. There she said to me in the coldest possible tone, "Look, we need to talk. Some lawyers will come to notify you about a meeting with me. They'll give you some papers, and naturally, you'll ask questions. Please don't make a big fuss out of all this, but I will apply for formal custody of the children. Don't get me wrong, you're a great father." Blah, blah, blah. She starts throwing me one false complaint after another as if to mitigate a little the pain of hearing how a man who lost his better half also had his little piece of heaven ripped away. I had to cut her off. I asked for explanations, and she told me that she would talk more about it at the meeting. Then she told me about how she would at least give me that day to pick up the kids from school, as it was some sort of threat. Then she hung up, leaving with my thoughts and pain in my chest, and I've never even felt this before. A couple of hours later, just like clockwork, the lawyers arrived. And well, let's just say I wasn't the friendliest person in the world. I know. In my position, I don't have the luxury of being rude, but when you're a teary-eyed and they don't care, you end up making a fuss that can be heard around the block. I hope this doesn't come into effect in the future. Update number 2. Well, have you ever felt like breaking something? In the sense that you're so angry that you feel like hitting the wall until you destroy it completely? Well, I'm holding myself back from doing that right now because the anger I have is not normal. I just came from a meeting with the lawyers and Molly. There, it was alleged that I was unfit to maintain custody because of my drinking habits, being labeled as a, quote, dangerous alcoholic, and a threat to the health and welfare of the growing children. I argued that since weeks before Rena's death, I hadn't touched a bottle, devoting all my time to her care, even neglecting some aspects of my work to stay by her side. Of course, I lied only slightly, for since then, I did drink a little. The week after I lost Rena, I drank at a few bars, and before I knew it, I had drowned a bottle of whiskey. But it was midnight, I was alone in the house, and I just spent the whole time crying on the living room furniture. At the slightest trace of drunkenness, I decided to stop and go back to my room to collapse. The hangover from the day before was terrible, and I still had to make breakfast for the kids and take them to school. In itself, I felt that no matter how defeated I felt, I could still be a good father and role model for my little ones. But they did not see it that way. None of them even believed me. There were questions that my lawyer, whom I had to rush to find because I didn't have time for anything, simply could not answer. Worst of all, it was all alleged that it was Rena's last wish before she passed away, that the children stay with Molly when at no time was the subject ever touched upon during her care. Had it been true, I wouldn't be making this fuss, or I would have done it much earlier. So, I think it's all lies. Had it been true, this conversation would have started weeks ago, and why wait so long? In a few hours, I'll have to pick up the children, and depending on the discussions at the meeting, within 2 days, I will have to give them to my mom or Rena's mother, while the discussions between Molly and I continue to unfold. I can't believe I get to hate one person so much. I haven't mentioned anything to my mom, but eventually I'll have to, as I'd rather she keeps Lynn and Mickey. I wrote Molly a few moments ago, almost going against my will, to comment on how things she was doing was going over the line with someone who has suffered so much, and that I'm not the man she's trying to fight. The kids love me, and I love them. But when I finished commenting to her about everything, do you know what her message was? And I quote, "I'm sorry, but we're not allowed to maintain contact during this process. You know what that is?" I tried to send several messages, but she just left them to read without replying. It was outrageous. I don't know whom to ask for help. I don't even know how to tell the children that not only have they just lost their mother, but they're about to be involuntarily abandoned by their dad. And I know for a fact that Molly would not be the best person to raise them. She's never even had children, and she's never been there for her nephew's big moments. You know why? Because she doesn't even like children. And she's never been there for her nephew's big moments, ever. That's the part that outrages me the most, that she's doing this to pretend to be a martyr, spectacle, fulfilling a last will that never even existed. I'll see how I can persuade her, because I don't want another loss in my life. I don't know what might happen if that happens. I only hope to maintain order and composure in a situation that doesn't allow me to keep them. Update number 3. I'm shaking. I'm shaking just writing this. Taking my children away from me has gone too far, and I can't find any solution to the problem. It's been a week since the last update, and the kids are with Rena and Molly's mother, and I've been left alone, reflecting on everything that happened. And during the last chat, which was yesterday, Molly gave supposed evidence that supported Rena's decision about the custody of the children. It was a letter that came from nowhere, and when Rena claiming that she had been afraid of me for years, and that in the case the worst happens, the children should immediately go to her. I had never heard such a crock, as Rena and I were very open about the possibility of the worst happening, and quote, spoiler alert, Molly wasn't in the conversation at all. She didn't even say to me anything like, quote, "Get along with my sister, as I know you both have some friction." Nothing like that. No, She just told me to take good care of the kids and that's it. Reliving those last experiences we had together, well, that was difficult. Because it makes me feel small and weak. I wish Molly would have some consideration about what the heck's going on. The issue of the letter is something my lawyer particularly wants to address, since if necessary, he would even analyze the handwriting to corroborate that it is indeed Rena's handwriting. According to Molly, Rena had been telling her for years about how she lived in constant terror and the presence of an alcoholic husband in the household. I had my ugly moments during drunken binges, but I'll be darned if I ever talked to her more or even raised my hand to my wife. If anything, there were nights when Rena would scold me for my outings, and rather than get angry or talk back, I just kept my head down, because deep down I knew she was right, and I needed to do better. Something that simply intensified after her condition presented itself. During the whole conversation, it was made clear that I was the worst human being on the face of the earth. Something that even the judge found a bit exaggerated. Anyways, the results will be given in a week, and I don't know if I'll make it out of this one. I'm planning to talk to one of Rena's friends who managed to help me with some expenses during the hospital operations a while ago. The problem is that she is on a trip, and I wouldn't want to interrupt her fun for a problem that doesn't pertain to her. I'll wait a bit and see what happens and, well, what means I can appeal to get the kids back with me. I swear that if they aren't by my side, I will have lost my reason to even continue to exist. And that's perhaps the saddest scenario I can think of. Update number 4. As embarrassed as I was, I had to write to Rena's friend. She's in Hawaii for vacation, and I told her that I had to talk to her about a very important matter about Rena. I didn't want to give too much details, as she seemed to be in a good mood, but I did give her an understanding that it was very, very important, and that as soon as she could notify me, if I could make a video call to her. We tried, but the connections were not entirely friendly. After that, I showed pictures of the alleged letter from Rena, and she said she did not believe it was true at all. I was running out of resources, and I tried because the worst has happened. The kids are now at Molly's, who had final custody. Since then, I haven't been able to know more about the children, since I'm not allowed to have direct contact with them except for the weekends. That is, I won't know if my children are doing well until their legal guardian, Molly, indicates me via a cold text message that they are indeed okay. And if there was anything noteworthy within a week, I'll be allowed to see them in a year, if I'm able to meet certain requirements that have to be met monthly. Once a month, a social worker will come to the house and will be asking me a series of questions to do behavioral assessments and residency checks. If he finds out that I'm doing anything remotely resembling drinking alcohol or worse, everything's suspended and I can say goodbye to the rest of my little family. I'm suffering to the point where I'm tempted to go to my friends to drown my sorrows, but the very thought of going to the bar makes my stomach churn. Thinking of even believing that Rena's whole speech, while not accurate to the letter, at least had some degree to truth to it. I'm just sinking into a dark pit where every action I take brings back bitter memories. I don't know if I can even afford a psychologist to deal with this. I've never been a big fan of therapy, although some friends have told me about it. I might even get extra points on monthly evaluations by seeking it out, but I want to distract myself a bit so I don't make a big deal out of it, but no one's that strong. Update number 5. Hey guys, how are you doing? I hope you're all doing well. Well, there's a lot to tell you. It's been quite some time since the last update. 2 months since this whole odyssey of checking in to see if I'm fit to have my children began. How'd it go? Well, I confess that it wasn't easy and even had some not so good moments, like the time I was caught watching my kids at school. waiting for them to come out to pick them up. I understand my limitations, but I've been called because of a conflict that's arisen at school. This was a few days after the children had stayed at their aunt's house. Apparently, my daughter Lynn could not adjust to the idea that her father now had to get out of her life as well. And since the kids that age tend to be a bit mouthy, they pushed too hard until things exploded. One of her classmates made a comment that did not sit well with her about her mother's passing, which, when I found out what it was said, I was even mad. And Lynn took the matter absolutely violently. Even though we taught her to respect others, something in her, quote, made her act that way. So, I was called to talk to her. Then something rather uncomfortable happened. The people at the school did not quite know my situation with the children at the moment, so they decided to call me as a contact. Of course, there was some guilt on my side for showing up and breaking the agreement, but I played crazy and decided to go anyways. It would serve as the perfect excuse to see my kids. I talked to the teacher and settled things out, setting the record straight and taking Lynn home. Or, well, even to Molly's. She and I talked about how what I had done was wrong. As much as she had been upset, Lynn was crying, saying it wasn't fair that the other kids could have a mom and a dad, and that she and her little brother had to be at her aunt's as she didn't even like it there. Before I could ask her why, we were already at Molly's house. When seeing us, the woman panics, grabbing the little girl by the arm, immediately pulling her into the house as if she'd seen a ghost. She began to scold me, saying that it wasn't my duty to look after the children and that if I did that again, she would take more extreme measures. Well, I told her that she's overreacting and to please not take Lynn by the arm like that as she could hurt her. Molly also said that she would talk to the people at the school district to prevent such a situation from happening again, and that in such a case, she should be the one to be notified to avoid friction. She then slammed the door in my face and I spent some time holding in my rage. I went back home and, well, I started writing. That's nothing new for me lately. Whenever I'm very upset, I start writing a little notebook that I've been carrying with me for a while. Something kind of like this, but a little bit more private. I read on the internet that it does good, being a kind therapeutic writing. It was almost what saved me from breaking all the glass in my house. And I hope the child protection people aren't reading this, and if so, it's just an expression. I'm upset, but I don't plan on doing anything drastic. Once more, I decided to beat Molly at her own game, and it was because of something I learned a while ago. A certain person, me, went to the school and asked the teachers how the kids have been doing. Since I had no way of communicating directly with them, I decided to look for a closest alternative. At first, I was treated with some suspicion, perhaps because of all that venom Molly had spewed at my name. But they quickly realized that I was just a parent trying to get back in touch with my kids. So, I was assisted by Mickey's teacher. She told me that the children's grades have dropped drastically, as was to be expected as children with recent trauma tend to drop in performance. But there was also a substantial change in the behavior of both Mickey and Lynn. I spoke with both of their teachers, and they said they were engaging in somewhat concerning behaviors. While Lynn remained quite touchy and would take the path of violence at the slightest inconvenience, I was told she even raised her voice to a teacher. Mickey's case was radically different, though. While the girl's was violent, my boy took a more submissive and sad posture. He would cry about almost everything and would withdraw from the playground with the other children, to the point where the others would tease him and call him ridiculous names. This caused his sister to arrive at recess and confront her little brother's bullies, and being older, they didn't stand a chance against her. They told about how Mickey once got, quote, lost during PE. They looked for him in the facilities and found him in one of the lockers of the basketball court crying, not wanting to go out, and repeating the same phrase. It's heartbreaking, but I'll repeat it. I want my parents to come back. I don't want to feel alone anymore." It was enough to break anyone's heart. This was already escalating to the levels that we did not know how to control, and I felt that if I had not gone to the school, the children would still be going through those scenarios, seeing how it seemed that their discomfort had the same origin. Over the next few weeks, I tracked the children's behavior in class, noticing how those behaviors and characteristics began to intensify. Mickey's fears and Lynn's authority were becoming quite prominent features of it, and so I asked, at the risk of getting into trouble, for meetings with the children's teachers to understand a little of what's going on. They were the first people who were 100% friendly and supportive of my situation. One of them even took pity on me, saying that the kid's aunt should not be doing these things, and that from where I had shown, I was good enough to have custody. They told me that Molly had not been going to report in meetings, and did not care about the welfare of the kids at school at least. It was as if she only cared about dropping them off and picking them up. I had to bite my tongue, as I felt I could do something about it, and truth is, I'm already planning it. I will be using testimonials from some individuals to back up my suspicions. I tried to set up a new meeting with Molly a month ago, but it was very recent, and I needed to confirm my suspicions, so wish me luck. As the next time I'll probably be writing, it may be after a movie night with my kids. Well, one can hope at least. Update number 6. Well, they do say revenge is a dish best served cold, but they never talked about the taste, do they? I have an answer for that. It's tasty. Kinda like ice cream. I'll tell you what happened. At the next followed-up meeting I had, I made the light of fact that I heard from the teachers, that I conveniently met on the street, wink wink, that the children were having problems in class, so I asked if it was possible to follow up on Molly's situation with the children in some way. The social workers said that in cases like this, double tracking could be done. It was done per se, but everything was very routine in that regard. With Molly's visits being only a few days apart from mine, the kids were looking good. They commented to me, but when I told them about the teachers, it got to their attention. Their worker told them that they would emphasize individual interviews with the children, which weren't that in-depth, just a quote, "We're fine, and that's it." Turns out, during the next visit, they pulled the kids away from Molly. Not very usual, apparently, and asked them somewhat more private questions, and the kids this time were a bit more explicit, with little Mickey saying something interesting, and I quote, "I don't like it here very much. It doesn't smell funny at Daddy's." Something that caught the attention of the social services was when they asked what they meant. They said there was a smell of something burning at midnight. After the interviews, they made a few little inquiries in the house, just pretending it was routine. And you know what they found? Oh, nothing. Just 2 pounds of marijuana. Just like you read it, Molly had a whole farm in her house, which triggered a red alert. In addition to the poor care that she was giving the children, there was an intervention by social services and a meeting in which I was also involved. I admit, I wanted to laugh heartedly every time she said, "But it's legal," and tried to convince them to keep the children with her when it was declared that the father, who had been in impeccable behavior for the past few months, could just continue with the guardianship himself. When I heard that statement, I felt as if a wind came through every pore of my body, thinking that justice might knock on the door. But that did not just stop there. There was more. It was decided to do more interviews with the children for all the negative effects it had on their behavior, and we learned some dark facts. Molly had a rather strict upbringing with them, where she benefited Lynn more just because she was a girl, showing some resentment towards the male gender. I felt very sad for little Mickey, as he was the biggest victim of a series of abuses, like putting him to sleep, or making him mop the whole house on his own. While Lynn could do less laborious things, but the little girl adopted Molly's bad habits, feeling somewhat overbearing with anyone except her own guardian. According to the child psychologist analyst, if the toxic environment had continued, Lynn would have ended up on the side of, well, negative, and Mickey with severe depression. And just imagine that scenario makes my blood run cold. To believe that for a moment, my children could have had their lives so ruined makes me want to hug them and never let them go again. As I could have predicted, I'm writing this whole thing talking with them in the living room, after having watched the movie on TV. In the end, I was able to regain permanent custody because my last report showed that I was, and I quote, an exemplary father who, amid all his grieving processes, has not only shown a significant change in the detachment from drinking, but an improvement in the human process as a parent, which makes him capable of making mature enough decisions to be able to care for his 2 children. Excellent, right? That's what they wrote in the report, and I now know I was luckier than Molly, who had to serve a 2-year sentence for a felony possession of marijuana. I really can't believe how lucky I was. Or maybe it wasn't luck but karma. Yeah, it's legal, but not 2 pounds. Currently, the kids are doing a little better in class, and we're having a few more frequent conversations about feelings and how the loss of their mother makes us feel. They have a great future ahead of them, and I'm glad to finally be a part of it. What's so strange to me about this entire story? You would think Molly would want to be there for her late sister's husband. In fact, you would think that she would be there for the whole grieving period. Not only that, you would also think that not only would she want to keep the kids together with their father, but she would try to support them as much as possible. But oh, the contraire, it was complete opposite and absolute madness. I could not help but feel absolute heartbreak for Mickey, who was basically the most innocent, pure child in this entire situation, and did not deserve any of this, all because of Molly. So let me know in the honest opinions down below, what would you do to handle the Molly situation if you were in OP's shoes trying to cope with alcoholism, the loss of his wife, and losing his children? That's so much for a human to bear. Drop your thoughts down below, guys. I enjoyed reading this story. It was definitely an intense one. Let me know your thoughts about it if you're new to the channel. My name's Mr. Reddito. I read stories every single day. Some very dramatic ones, some very over-the-top ones, some about money, some about betrayal. You name it, we'll probably cover it. I hope to see you guys tomorrow. Have a fantastic day.